Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about the Genesys tabletop role-playing game, the one by Fantasy Flight Games with narrative dice. I'm going to be talking about Philadelphia's Finest, a completed medium-size campaign, right? That was a modern supers game that me and my friends just completed. So I played in this game as a player. The name of my player character was Darius Godai, and he was essentially like a supers spiritualist. He had the ability to, his superhero name was called Vessel, and he had the ability to bring in spirits. And the idea was that, like, he would bring in a spirit, right? He would go to like a cemetery in the middle of Philadelphia, and the idea would be he would like go to the grave of like a Vietnam vet, bring that Vietnam vet in, and then he would have the ability to use, he would have ranged light, he would have the ability to track, he would have a bit of grit, that kind of thing, right? So he would get the talents and the skills of the spirits that he brought into himself, right? And he had like a limit on how many he could hold, right? Now it turns out this is pretty ambitious on my part, and I had a lot of fun running Darius Kodai, but it really strained, I think, my ability to use the rules to get the results that I wanted, right? However, let me talk more broadly about the game. So the game was, everybody in the game is a friend of mine. We played at, and so it was a real blessing to me, because it was very, very low impact for me. I was able to just go to one friend's house who was hosting the game. Another friend was actually serving as the game master, right? And that game master was serving because they were very excited about the Genesys core rulebook. And pretty much everybody in our group, we were longtime FFG Star Wars players. And so when FFG said, hey, here's a generic book that you can use the narrative dice to run any story you want, one of the Star Wars players got very excited and say, I'm going to run this campaign, and everybody jumped on board. So Philadelphia's Finest Philadelphia's Finest refers to the group of superheroes who actually functioned within Philadelphia's perimeters, right? Within the city of Philadelphia. So there was Darius Kodai. There was another player character named Sanders. Sanders was a Vietnam vet that had very much like Captain America, had experimentation done on him, and he got superpowers from his experimentations. There's another character named Tactical Force. Tactical Force was kind of like an early stage Iron Man. He actually had a powered armor suit that he was building throughout the game. And then finally, you had Detective Lynch, right? Now, Detective Lynch was a Philadelphia police detective who actually also had superpowers, very low-key superpowers that really manifested very little in the game, and mostly his ability was to be able to, like, call in 10 squad cars to a particular site. He was an interesting character. Excuse me. So you have these 4 player characters, and it occurred in current day Philadelphia, right? So one of the things that was really cool was we could actually just look on the map, and like there was one fight scene that happened at the Philadelphia at the mayor's office, right? There was one that happened at the Philadelphia Art Museum. There was one session, there was one combat that happened in North Philadelphia. There were combats that happened in South Philadelphia, right? So it was really interesting, and it really gave the campaign a really interesting aspect, right? So I learned a lot so actually one of the things I wanted to talk about is we just completed this campaign. It's a completed season 1, right? And it had its own story arc, and it ended in a one cohesive tale, right? And And I learned a ton by playing in this game because, one, it's not that often that I actually get out of the Game Master's chair and actually take the chair of a player. And I learned a ton. One thing I learned is I really struggle as a player. I am really not a great player. In many ways, I'm kind of a terrible player. And, I'm very fortunate. I keep getting invited to games. But the reality is, I'm just really trying to put it into perspective myself. Because I just have so much fun sitting down with my friends and, and just enjoying the game, and seeing what's happening and having my turn and doing crazy things on my turn. But I will say this, I'm not sure that I, as a player, bring a lot of joy to other players because I often frustrate them. Because one of the things is, like, I'm always trying to figure out ways to shortcut the combat, like deal with the combat in an unconventional way. Whenever I'm absolutely allergic to anything that I consider as a railroad, right? And so I'm often trying to steer the game in different ways, and that can be really problematic for other players, right? And so, I'm not sure what to do with this because I really had a great time. This campaign was 12. I played in 12 sessions. Those 12 sessions took 7 months to do, and during that time, the Game Master ran some one-offs, some like singular mini adventures for specific singular player characters. So there was 16 sessions total. I got to play in 12 of those, and I had the opportunity to play in all 16, but they were like little flashbacks, like where you do a flash, like the vet, right? The vet character, he was an Iraq vet, right? And so there was an entire session that was a flashback for that Iraq vet, and I wasn't able to play in that one, and it was okay because it was complete. It wasn't connected to the main story, right? Almost like that standalone and complex thing that happens with shows, right? So it was really good. So I was really impressed that the Game Master was able to take the Genesys core role-playing game system, and I will say that system is incredibly powerful and incredibly useful, and really stands as an absolute success story for what you can do with a new tabletop role-playing game system. So I really think that Fantasy Flight Games has done a tremendous job with the Star Wars title, and they've really done a good job of transferring a lot of that success over to themselves with the core role-playing game system in case Star Wars ever goes away. Which is there's so many lessons to be learned with this. Like one of the lessons really is Pathfinder. I really feel, personally, my opinion, I think Paizo's in a lot of trouble right now, right? They just sat around and enjoyed Pathfinder while they could, did very little. Only when 5th edition was a year or two old did they start Starfinder. They really never really gave themselves much range or much ability to survive when Pathfinder died, and it is dying, in my opinion. I think Pathfinder is dying right now. It certainly hasn't died, but I think Pathfinder is absolutely a dying great game. I don't think it's growing at all. In fact, I really do think it's starting to recede in size. Right, so but the Genesys core tabletop role-playing game system is incredibly powerful. The narrative dice are really fantastic. All right, so let me talk about a few things, other things I learned. So one of the things that I learned are reinforcements of things I already knew, but I saw really, really, really directly. So one, the energy for an entire tabletop role-playing game session comes from the Game Master. So like one of the game nights, the Game Master was like kind of slapped himself in the face. He's like, whoo, like got himself going. He's like, oh boy, I'm really tired. I need to get going because I got to get this going. And it was really amazing to me that this, and this is a Game Master who's kind of at the beginning of his Game Mastering career. He's run like maybe one and a half campaign, like little mini campaigns before this. This is by far the most successful campaign this Game Master has ever run, and it was really, I was incredibly impressed, to run a completely medium-sized campaign, 16 sessions, all within 7 months. We played weekly. We played once a week, right? 4 hours sessions, and actually, this was an incredible blessing We started at 4-hour sessions with things going to 4.5 and even, routinely going to 4.5, 4 hours and 45-minute sessions. By the end of the game, we were at 3-hour sessions, which was a huge blessing to me. I really liked that, right? And it was in a time slot that everybody was able to play. It was just really nice. It was really, really just nice to see. So the energy for the campaign comes from the Game Master. So when you sit down, you have to start high energy, you have to remain high energy, and you have to finish high energy. It's really important. The energy for the game radiates off of a Game Master, and essentially, the Game Master just kind of pours out their own energy into the players, and determines the energy level of the entire game, right? And I've now, I just saw that so clearly sitting in the seat of the player. One thing that that I was a little disappointed with is I think the Genesys system is very crunchy, and one of the things that frustrated me a little bit is just the glacial pace of combat. It really, I've seen this problem for a while, and it's just so real and so clear. Like, really what was happening is every player at the table had a complex character that had a lot of powers, and when they would get their turn, they would take 5 minutes. You have 4 players, right? And it would easily be 10 to 20 minutes between actions. 10 to 20 minutes between actions. Most combats took 2 hours of the game. An hour to 2 hours of the game for each combat, which meant that you were getting some role-playing in there, but there's just so much of a myopic focus on combat within most tabletop role-playing games, and the ability to move those combats faster is incredibly important. So it's one of the reasons why I've switched over to these games like Index Card RPG, the Mecha Hack, Tiny Dungeon 2E, Maze Rats. These minimalist games, they just let the action flow a lot faster, right? So that was one thing that it was absolutely not a failing of the Game Master. It was just really more an acknowledgement of what these crunchy games are able to do. And one of the things I think is really interesting, one of the problems we have is within the industry, within the tabletop role-playing game industry, is the idea of, I'm going to run this combat faster, and the idea that, if I make this 10 or 15% faster or even 20% faster, that'll be great. When the reality is we need 10-minute combats, 15-minute combats, and nobody's even really come close to building a system for that, right? And so we're still pretty far away from the mark. I think one of the other lessons I walked away with is it's absolutely crucial that you cannot throw player characters together and expect that those player characters are going to coalesce together as a group. If you bring them in as individuals and say they're going to grow to be friends and they're going to grow to be a cohesive group together, that's a huge assumption. I really feel like a lot of games have done this on the indie space, and I think we need to get there in the more mainstream games where you are mechanically incenting and giving ways to mechanically tie and bind characters together to say, this is the reason you adventure together. You have a deep set reason to be an adventurer with this other person, and you're either siblings, or you have a life debt to this other person, or not every player character needs to be bound to every other player character, but every single player character needs to be bound, like braided with like a cord to one other character, so that there is a reason for them to be together, right? And so that was one of the things that I struggled with throughout the game. Was it was really strange, because we were all friends at the table, but the player characters started from a position of non-friendship, and for many of the player characters that remained for the entire game. which was really strange. There was a really significant amount of lone wolfing in this game, and I really wish that we'd been able to move past that. I don't think we were ever able to move past that. So that was a little bit of a challenge. So I'm going to start wrapping this up. So overall, Genesys core tabletop role-playing game, it's fantastic. You can run anything with it. It's really, you can absolutely today, you can run a medium-length campaign. You can finish it, 7 months, 16 sessions is really one cohesive story, which was really impressive. It's really good to just sit down with your friends and enjoy a game. I really do, from a self-reflection perspective, I really need to reflect on myself as a player. And I have to figure out, hey, what do I do to become a better player? Or just acknowledge you've been working on this for a couple of years and you're not getting better. Maybe the best thing to do is remain in the Game Master chair. I don't know. It's a tough challenge. I'm not sure where to land on it. But I was very fortunate to have played in Philadelphia's finest, a Genesys Supers game, and it was really cool to finish that all within the span of 2018. Take care.